The plane landed, another business trip over. I'd stopped insisting that Renee pick me up. So when I saw her outside the airport in the biting midnight wind, picking up another man, I was surprisingly calm. Before the flight, I was scrolling through Quora. If your partner was flying back alone from a business trip, landing after 11 p.m., would you go pick them up? I clicked on it, thinking about the 2 times I'd gotten back late and Renee had made excuses not to come get me. The top voted answer hit me like a ton of bricks. If the person picking you up wasn't your wife but your mother, she would have been there early. And after picking you up, she wouldn't complain about the bad parking or how much the gas cost. It's not about men and women thinking differently. It's not that hard to admit you're just not loved. As I got off the plane, I waited for the taxi I'd already booked, but a part of me couldn't help but hold out a sliver of hope. It was 11:10 p.m. My mom was definitely asleep, and I didn't want to bother her. So I texted my best friend, Jax, who never wakes up before the sun is high in the sky. At the airport, come get me? Venmo me 200. Go to hell.
I'm sleeping.
Get your own cab. I accepted the money with a clear conscience, and then my phone started blowing up with his calls. Aren't there usually a ton of taxis waiting at the airport? Then again, it is pretty late. That damn airport is so far out. Do taxis even want to wait for fares there? I bet even an Uber wouldn't want to take that trip. You lazy ass. Did you get a ride yet? Answer me. Hold on, I'm getting out of bed. This is gonna cost you a fancy seafood buffet. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I rubbed my slightly numb face and smiled as I texted back, just messing with you. I already booked a car. Go back to sleep, Baldy. He sent me a sticker of a shining butcher knife. I turned off my phone and stood on the curb, quietly waiting for my driver. As I glanced around, I saw her in the distance. Renee. She took a suitcase from Ethan, carefully placed it in the trunk, then solicitously opened the passenger door for him. When she looked up, she saw me, and the faint smile on her face vanished. Ethan had been on my flight. I'd seen him at security but couldn't be bothered with pleasantries, so I pretended I hadn't. I just didn't expect to be humiliated like this after we landed. Seems my girlfriend has a new boyfriend. To show how considerate I was, I turned my head and pretended I hadn't seen a thing. The plane was scheduled to land at 11:40 p.m. Factoring in potential delays, I had arranged for the driver to pick me up at midnight. I never expected to land half an hour early. I called the driver to see if he could come sooner. When he said he was 10 minutes away, I felt a small surge of happiness, thinking my luck was turning. The service I paid for was willing to wait for me. So what about you, Renee? How deep does your love run? You pretend not to see me, and I'll pretend not to see you. Wouldn't it be better if we all just got along? So when Renee's car glided to a stop beside me, I sighed almost imperceptibly, feeling a deep sense of exhaustion. Ethan spoke first, his voice clear as he looked past the driver's seat at me. I was wondering why Professor Renee was so agreeable this time, saying yes right away when I asked for a ride. Turns out you were here too, Leo. Get in, get in. It's freezing out here. That phrase, this time, implied that Renee had picked him up more than once. The young man was using a familiar tone to stir up trouble. Now that I'd set aside my feelings for Renee, I found his clumsy attempt at manipulation almost amusing. His voice had a unique magnetic quality, the perfect thing to keep you awake. I guess Renee would have the best talk radio host right beside her for the drive home. Get in, Renee said. She kept her eyes down, not looking at me. She didn't look happy, probably because my presence had ruined her good mood. No, thanks, I said, holding up my phone with a polite but distant smile. I called a car. You guys go ahead. Get home and get some rest. Huh? Ethan's expression was over the top as his eyes darted between me and Renee. Isn't Professor Renee here to pick you up, Leo? His one sentence plunged the air into silence. After a moment, Renee suddenly asked me, "Why didn't you tell me you were coming back today?" I found the question laughable. What if I had told you? Would you have come to get me? I thought back through our chat history. The only 2 times I had late-night flights and couldn't get a car, I'd asked her to pick me up, and both times she refused. I learned my lesson after that. I started paying extra to book a driver in advance so I wouldn't end up stranded outside a desolate airport, feeling sorry for myself. Seeing her here now, picking up another man, I'll admit I felt a little resentful. But I'm a thoughtful guy. I wasn't about to make her lose face in front of her new flame. It was a last-minute trip, I said. Get in, she repeated after a long pause. In the distance, a car honked twice. I looked over and recognized the license plate. I let out a sigh of relief and waved at the car, then turned back to Renee. I booked this driver this morning. I can't just have him make the trip for nothing. You two head back. Drive safe. The rideshare driver got out, took my suitcase with a friendly, regional accent, and put it in the trunk for me. Sitting in the back seat, watching the scenery recede on both sides of the road, it suddenly occurred to me. Expecting a little more care from someone in a relationship is a fool's errand. It's more reliable to just pay for the emotional validation you need. A rather late realization, I have to admit. When I got home, Renee wasn't back yet. A full week of business travel had left me exhausted. After a shower, I sat on the sofa waiting for my hair to air dry while I organized my receipts for my expense report. As Renee walked in, I was thinking about how I couldn't stand this damn job for another day. So I started harassing Jax via text, telling him to hurry up and get rich so he could be my sugar daddy. I was in the middle of a fun chat with Jax when Renee handed me a small gift box. I paused for a second, then took it and opened it. It was a watch. It's beautiful, thank you, I said, looking up at her with a smile. Then I closed the lid and set the gift on the coffee table. She was a full-time professor at AU's College of Chemistry and Chemical Engineering. Last year, her department started a collaboration with Wellness Home, and she was in charge. Ethan was the son of Wellness Home's owner. Whether it's a big company or a small one, he's still the boss's son. It's not like they can't afford to hire a driver. The excuse was just pathetic. She must have realized what I was thinking, because her face turned deathly pale. Leo, she said, her voice accusatory, you don't have to be so passive-aggressive. I blinked, realizing my words might have sounded a bit snide. I felt a pang of annoyance with myself. My brain must be fried from this business trip. I've forgotten the art of conversation. Sorry, I apologized. I honestly meant it. Nothing else behind it. You've had a long day too. Get some rest. The next day, I decided to make contact with my new target. Her name was Vivian Lin, and she was in PR. Specifically, she handled crisis management for wealthy clients. I first saw her a few days ago at an international auto show I'd attended during my trip. She was trailing behind a CEO who had been drowning in negative press. After the auto show, that CEO's public image took a sharp turn for the better, and his company's stock price rebounded significantly. At first, I was just admiring a beautiful woman. But last night, my head cleared. I Googled her. The more I read, the more I liked, especially the exquisite, full lips on her sharply defined face. They gave off an alluring sense that she was anything but ordinary. So today, I deliberately ditched my usual clean-cut style for a more polished, high-end look. Renee, for once, was sleeping in. I thoughtfully closed the door to the walk-in closet and got dressed in the living room. As I was clearing the mess off the coffee table, my fingers brushed against the small box containing the watch. Without a moment's hesitation, I tossed it into the trash can along with everything else. Just as I arrived at the building where Vivian's studio was located, Renee sent me a photo. The lid of the jewelry box was open, the watch lying plainly visible inside the trash can. What is the meaning of this? She typed. Not wanting to start anything, I made up an excuse. I wasn't paying attention when I was throwing out the trash and tossed it by mistake. Enough! I could feel her anger even through the screen. I already explained what happened at the airport last night. How long are you going to hold on to this? I sighed to myself. How had I never noticed before that Renee was so full of herself? That she actually thought I'd throw a childish tantrum out of jealousy. I threw the watch away because, naturally, I thought it was trash. Just like her. I had carefully selected my reason for visiting Vivian. ClearPath Home, as a local company, shared its roots with Wellness Home. The two had been rivals for decades, with Wellness Home ultimately coming out on top. I was asking Vivian to help reshape ClearPath's corporate image and build its brand recognition. Vivian was wearing a mask because of a cold. Her eyes were deep set, and even with a stuffy nose, her voice was soft. Unfortunately, her words were sharp. "Mr. Kent, I'm one of the top people in this industry. Taking on a small company like this would make me look cheap." She rejected my request. I leaned back in my chair, glancing with interest at her long, slender fingers, with their distinct knuckles, crossed on the desk, and the slight rise and fall of her chest as she spoke. "So sexy. Sexy women have all the luck. They get noticed by me. Business is business, but we can still be civil, Ms. Lin. How about a casual lunch?" I offered. Her eyes held a cool, distant smile. "I'm a woman of my word, Mr. Kent. Don't waste your breath." "Fine." I didn't press it. I stood up and walked out. Just as I stepped out of her office, I heard Vivian's footsteps right behind me. "Mr. Kent, your files," she said, handing back the documents I'd brought. I looked at her stunning beauty, so close it was almost jarring, and suddenly smiled. "Ms. Lin, how about a wager?" Her expression showed a flicker of interest. "What kind of wager?" I shook the files in my hand. "If I pull this off by myself, how about you and I find some time for a deeper conversation?" Vivian said, "If you can do it yourself, Mr. Kent, why come to me?" I narrowed my eyes and found the perfect excuse. Why waste the brainpower when you can just pay to solve the problem? That afternoon, I met with Frank Wilson, the founder of ClearPath Home, at a high-end private club. After our meeting, I took advantage of Mr. Wilson's membership to request the top masseuse, someone only available to VIP clients. She was only 18, with big, timid doe eyes that made you want to protect her. I turned on my phone's camera and pointed it at her, then pulled my foot from her hands. "You're so young," I asked. "Shouldn't you be in school?" She looked pitiful. She must have been new, her face still showing a hint of reluctance. "My family's not well off." Beside me, Mr. Wilson scoffed. "Do you all get trained with the same lines here? Every single one of you has a family that's not well off." Mr. Wilson was living it up, surrounded by 3 different types of beautiful women, enjoying massages on his shoulders, arms, and feet. The long-legged beauty kneeling to massage his feet was wearing a form-fitting dress that couldn't hide her curves. The look in her eyes was utterly seductive, the look of someone who was done trying to make it on her own. I used to look down on places like this. Now I realize how pretentious I was. "Leo," Mr. Wilson said, enjoying a piece of fruit being fed to him, "let's not beat around the bush. You said you could help me teach that bitch a lesson, and I believe you. But business is business. More than revenge, I want ClearPath Home to make a fortune." I smiled. "Don't worry, Mr. Wilson. I guarantee you'll get both your money and your revenge." With that, I handed him several pages of A4 paper I'd spent all afternoon drafting, an interview QA. As a moderately well-known strategist in the country, my main job was to provide small and medium-sized enterprises with plans to boost their credibility and sales. After nearly a decade in the business, I'd worked in all sorts of industries and had built a decent network. So it wasn't hard to ask a favor from a local TV station's interview program: get Frank a spot to air his grievances. Frank is the ex-husband of Elaine, who is Ethan's mother. They had a tumultuous marriage for over 2 years, finally divorcing after their daughter was born. This wasn't a secret, a little digging would reveal it. But back then, online media wasn't as developed, and a rich man's wife keeping a lover wasn't that unusual, so it never became a huge public scandal. Now was the perfect time to use it. I left the club feeling refreshed. I had to admit, the masseuse was not only easy on the eyes but also skilled at her craft. I would definitely be back. Just as I was stretching, I got a message from the heiress of Triumph Pharmachem. An okay hand gesture emoji. I smiled and typed back, "Thanks." She replied quickly, "It's my honor to cash in a favor from a top strategist just by showing up." Everything was in place. All I had to do was wait for the radio interview on Thursday night. I looked at the sunset in the distance and smiled. On Friday, I was dressed to the nines, waiting in Vivian's office to take her out for a drink. She first frowned and refused. But today, I was particularly in the mood to drink with her. If she didn't agree, I wasn't leaving. She was truly beautiful when she worked. With her gold-rimmed glasses on, she was both intellectual and captivating. Finally, she surrendered, breaking her perfect record of never leaving work early. At 3 p.m., after getting into the car with her, I posted the video of the masseuse I'd filmed at the club to my social feed. The caption read, "Drunk dad, sick mom, brother in school." The good Samaritan in me decided to take care of this broken soul. At this time of day, Renee's graduate students were probably still at their desks, slacking off. Sure enough, less than 2 minutes after I posted the video, a familiar profile picture with a familiar name liked my post. Half a minute later, the like was stealthily removed. When Renee and I were in love, we had a mutual understanding to never get involved in each other's professional circles. It was only after Ethan started flaunting himself in front of me that I broke my own rule 6 months ago and began reaching out to Renee's colleagues and students. I'd send her colleagues some nice tea and movie tickets, buy her students bubble tea and small cakes, just to get my face known. If Renee dared to jump seamlessly into a new relationship, I was going to make damn sure the people around her looked down on her. It was also to lay the groundwork for today's plan. I never bet on a woman's conscience. My habit was to always be prepared. After that, I sent a message to the Triumph Pharmachem heiress. "It's time." She replied with an okay hand gesture. Half a minute later, she sent me a screenshot of her chat with Renee. Couldn't help it. I laughed out loud. Vivian, who was driving, gave me an unreadable look. "How's your tolerance for alcohol?" I asked her. She pursed her lips and, after a moment, replied, "Not great. Not great. Not great is good." My eyes casually drifted downward for a moment. TSK. Always in those black skirt suits. Hard to tell. No matter. Always be prepared. I'd bought all sizes, of course. In today's world, very few people listen to the radio. Local radio interview shows are even more boring, with ratings probably lower than a classic oldies station. So Mr. Wilson's interview yesterday didn't make any waves. But that didn't matter. It was meant for Renee to see first. There was a follow-up plan. Renee doesn't listen to the radio, nor does she gossip much. If I wanted her to know that Ethan carried the label of illegitimate son, I'd have to feed it to her directly. I specifically commissioned a few chemical industry blogs that she followed to write articles about the old story Frank had told on the radio. Afraid she'd be too busy to see the articles, I asked the Triumph heiress to pass them along to her personally. When a potential future business partner sends you an article, you have to at least glance at it. At the same time, I forwarded the article to Ethan with a taunt. "Guess who dug up your family history?" He was probably going to explode. I wonder if he'll make Renee come home to lecture me. Can't wait. For the past few days, Renee had been punishing me by not coming home, which conveniently allowed me to throw all of her things in the trash. I also deleted her fingerprint from the door lock. And with the business on my social feed, Renee would have to come back and confront me sooner or later. Vivian's tolerance really was terrible. She was out after 2 drinks. After helping her onto the living room sofa, I couldn't help but think that younger women are just better. When the doorbell rang, I threw a blanket over Vivian, slipped on my wrinkled clothes from nearby, and went to open the door. The moment I opened it, Renee confronted me. "You deleted my fingerprint? And you changed the code?" A perfectly timed, delicate moan came from inside the room. Renee was immediately on high alert. She strode into the room, and the mess was enough to tell her what had just happened. "Leo!" She seethed, her fists clenched so tight they cracked. "You're cheating on me?" My tone was innocent. "How can you call it cheating? She has a condition. She needs this to be cured." I struggled to keep from laughing. I have a kind heart. I can't bear to see her suffer. She erupted in fury. "Leo, if you don't want to be with me, you can just say so. What is this? You hire a masseuse and post it all over your feed, so everyone at the university thinks I'm being cheated on, and now you bring a woman home. I think you've lost your mind." I tilted my head, looking at her with confusion. But my post explained the situation clearly. That girl's family situation is so tragic. I was just mobilizing my network to help her get more business. How is that cheating on you? Your mind is so dirty." She laughed, but it was a laugh of pure anger. The whites of her eyes were shot with red as she looked at me, her face a mask of disappointment. "These self-righteous excuses are just your way of justifying your cheating." The innocence on my face was replaced by cold indifference. My sharp gaze felt like it could pierce right through her. "You can believe that the son of a business magnate has no one to pick him up from a late-night flight. So why can't I believe a masseuse has a tragic family story? Why can't I believe a woman has a disease that only a man can cure?" With that, I could no longer hold back my laughter, a victorious laugh. "Renee, such a double standard. How pathetic is that?" Her face instantly turned ashen. Renee left in disgrace. I turned around. Vivian was sitting on the floor, leaning against the sofa with her elbows propped up. One leg was bent, making her look fragile and helpless.
I toast her kloge sig her.
"It's late. Go home." She looked up at me, her eyes moist. Compared to her usual sharp demeanor, the redness at the corners of her eyes now made her look somewhat bewitching. "You get me drunk, bring me home, have your way with me, and then kick me out? Aren't you afraid I'll press charges?" Her voice was a little hoarse, sounding soft and utterly non-threatening. I looked at her with interest, trying to tell if she was being serious or just messing with me. The little fox was quite seasoned, her expression gave nothing away. I leaned down, forcefully gripping her chin to make her look up at me, my eyes playful. "Our lines of work are similar. Once we've identified a target, we do our homework. So, whether your tolerance is good or bad, I already know." She was truly beautiful. Looking at this face up close, under the bright lights of the living room, made me wish we could revisit what had just happened. I may not be a doctor, but I know that when a woman gets drunk, her guard only goes up, I continued. "And you seem to be enjoying yourself just now. The first time I saw you in your office, you were wearing a mask. When you chased after me to return my files, you took it off. Weren't you just trying to seduce me with that face?" Seeing the flicker of panic in her eyes, I felt a surge of glee and slowly uttered two words. "You phony." Since the cat was out of the bag, she dropped the act, letting out a low laugh. She turned her head and rubbed her cheek against the back of my hand. "Well, since you know everything, give me a chance. I'll even be your mistress." I looked at her fawning expression and chuckled. When you have the upper hand, a woman will always be obedient. Wellness Homes sent out a cease and desist letter, claiming that the radio station and the gossip blogs had damaged the company's reputation. Ethan made a point to inform me, and I could feel his smugness through the screen. "Just you wait. We'll make you pay." The truth is, Elaine pushing out her husband for a boy toy is a minor affair. In modern society, unless you're a celebrity or a household name, most people don't care about the dirty laundry of small-time entrepreneurs. Elaine wouldn't have cared about such a small thing, but she probably caved to her son's whining. I found Frank's social media account and told him what had happened. At that moment, Frank was on a live stream, vigorously promoting his products. Times had changed. He used to be content with his little corner of the market, but as a local business, he couldn't compete with Wellness Homes' established foundation and reputation. Not only was he losing the fight, but his production lines were also shrinking year after year. When his offline channels failed, he set his sights on online sales. By leveraging his history with Elaine, I could shape him into a resilient figure abandoned by his wife. With a little money to buy some trending spots and create positive buzz, we could attract a wave of followers. Later, I would create a sales plan for his products to help him grow his business. And just like that, Ethan served up the perfect opportunity on a silver platter. That night, ClearPath Home registered an X account and issued a statement. The founder's words during the interview were all true, without any falsehoods. They had not expected it to implicate others. If the radio station and the blogs were required to pay any damages, ClearPath Home would cover all costs. Then we spent a little more money to get it trending. The next day, Frank's live stream had over 1,000 viewers, including a few media reporters alongside the usual gawkers. When the paid commenters started steering the conversation toward the legal letter from Wellness Home and his past with Elaine, Frank delivered the best acting performance of his 50-plus years. When I first found out she was keeping a boy toy, my world fell apart. I even started looking for what was wrong with me, wondering if it was because my business had failed for a few years and I couldn't give her the life she wanted. Then I did the math and it didn't add up. The boy toy's son was already in her belly. That's when I understood. Women are just trash. Due to the live stream's rules, the word trash was only mouthed. She wanted to have her cake and eat it too. I couldn't take that humiliation. I fought with her. I couldn't accept my daughter having to split her inheritance with an illegitimate son. And you know what happened? She had been plotting against me since we got married. My in-laws put a lot of money into her business, but when we divorced, I didn't get a dime. Right, she did give me a condo. Oh, and that's a story in itself. I'll never forget the look of charity in her eyes. She said she didn't want our daughter sleeping on the street, so she gave me the house out of pity. I really wanted to refuse out of pride, but I'm not an idiot. That condo was worth at least $200,000. It was good to have it as an asset for my daughter. So I swallowed my pride. All these years have passed. I go on a late-night radio show, a show with no audience, to vent a little, and they come sniffing around. Isn't that hilarious? Yes, I started ClearPath Home because I had this fire in my belly. I wanted to compete with her. And it's true, my products don't sell as well as hers. Right now, I'm just trying to sell off my piled-up inventory at a discount, then sell the factory and split the money with my employees. I admit my business sense isn't as good as hers. I was hot-headed when I was younger. Now that my daughter's grown, I've let it all go. As long as she's okay, I don't care what happens to me. Abandoned by a cheating wife, humiliated by her lover, yet still resilient and devoted to his daughter, it was enough to resonate with a lot of people. By the third day, his live stream had 20,000 viewers, and his daily online sales broke 10,000 units. When we met for dinner, Frank beamed and raised his glass to me. You young people really have vision. At this rate, I'll have to open a new production line. I raised my glass to his. A momentary sales spike is just online sympathy. For long-term success, the most important thing is the product itself. I understand that principle. I'm already keeping a close eye on the research lab, striving to make our products cheap and effective, Frank said. The marketing department has also prepared the survey you requested. Let me know when and how you want to release it. No rush, I said. In business, you have to show what you've got, not hide it. Get some paid commenters, make sure they have local IPs, and sell some nostalgia. Praise the products. Plant the seed of cheap and effective in the public's mind. Add your personal story on top of that. That way, when people think about stocking up on cleaning supplies, they'll naturally consider ClearPath Home. Most business owners choose all sorts of celebrity spokespeople. Mr. Wilson, in your case, you are the brand spokesman. Approachable, tough, magnanimous, a good man, these are your labels now. You can't afford to mess that up later. You can count on me for that, Frank assured me. I want to see that bitch drawn and quartered. Until she's finished, I won't do anything to jeopardize myself. When I left, Frank stuffed a wad of cash into my hand. I didn't hesitate, taking it and immediately tossing it to Jax, who had been my long-suffering driver for the day. Jax obsequiously opened the car door for me, a wide grin on his face as he stepped on the gas. Nice one, Leo. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. You single-handedly propped up Ethan's mom's ex-husband, made sure everyone knows Ethan's an illegitimate son, and ruined his reputation. His nose must be bent out of shape with rage. Hearing the excitement in his voice, I asked with a faint smile, "You think all I did was to piss off Ethan?" We hit a red light. He turned his head, blinking at me with an innocent look. "Isn't it?" I stared straight ahead, non-committal. I did all this so Elaine would have to watch her life's work, built over decades, go up in flames. How can an ordinary person take down a corporation? Naturally, you need to find a big tree for support. Help ClearPath Home grow bigger and stronger. As sales go up, production has to go up. As production goes up, the need for raw materials goes up. Wellness Home and ClearPath Home both make cleaning products, so their raw materials inevitably overlap. If you cut off most of Wellness Home's raw material suppliers, how can it continue to make products? I told Frank to prepare a shell company. When Elaine is at the end of her rope and has to sell her factory, The look on her face when she discovers it's in the hands of her mortal enemy will be priceless. This plan had many potential variables, of course. For instance, how deep did Frank's hatred for Elaine really run? To truly swallow Wellness Home, he'd have to sacrifice a lot of profit. In the face of money, the human heart is hard to predict. Furthermore, could Wellness Home rise from the ashes? I could only take it one step at a time. When Jax heard my plan, his jaw dropped in shock. He then shrank back and said, "No surprise there. Anyone who crosses you comes to a bad end." At the mention of that, I sighed with a bit of frustration. I still couldn't think of a suitably tragic fate for Renee. Although she wanted it all, she and Ethan hadn't done anything too outrageous. She's smart, educated, and dedicated to her work. Her students give her high marks. Even if I ran around telling everyone she was having an emotional affair, it wouldn't have any real impact on her. So difficult. Wellness Home reacted quickly. Seeing ClearPath Home sales continue to soar, they also started live streaming. But it was a clumsy imitation. Many people flooded Wellness Home's streams with passive-aggressive comments, sarcastically asking if they gave away a free boy toy with every purchase. As a result, their hosts would lose all their energy shortly after starting each stream. At this point, Frank once again cultivated his image as a sincere entrepreneur on his own live stream. Live stream selling, just because I'm doing it doesn't mean I can monopolize it and stop others. We all compete on our own merits. The product speaks for itself, and I have great confidence in what I'm selling. And don't feel like you have to buy my products out of pity. If you think the product is good, buy it. If you don't, buy from somewhere else. You live your own life, you have to do what makes you comfortable. ClearPath Home has a limited product line. We recently put out a survey. Just send a direct message to this account with the word survey, and a link will pop up. Click on it, fill it out, and you can get an $8 coupon. That's right, no minimum purchase required. You can use it to buy our most basic item, the 4-pound bag of laundry detergent for $9.99. With the coupon, it's $1.99, shipping included. One coupon per account, so feel free to get your family members in on it. For days on end, the popularity of Frank's live stream remained high, and his sales climbed steadily. Vindicated, he became more vibrant and energetic. At the dinner table, he confided in me, "Leo, I know you're worried I'll stop caring about revenge once I start making money. But me, whenever I think of that smug look on her face when she asked for a divorce, I just can't swallow it. These past few years, ClearPath's business has been getting harder and harder. I held on by a thread and never gave up on the company, just thinking that even if I couldn't take Elaine down, I had to at least take a bite out of her. I sent my daughter to live abroad years ago, precisely so I'd have no strings attached and could go all in. It was you who approached me and gave me hope again. You've made my business better than ever, but you also know that Wellness Home has deep roots. It won't be easy to take them down quickly." "I know," I replied. "Mr. Wilson, I just need you to do me one more favor. A small one. A few days ago, I happened to run into Ethan with his arm linked through Renee's, lingering by my door. From the proud look in Ethan's eyes, it was clear he had brought her here deliberately to show off. Young men are so full of themselves. His cutting words had no bite at all. "Leo, you getting some work done?" "Hey Leo, Renee and I are going to the mall. Why don't you come with?" Renee stood beside him, visibly embarrassed. She wouldn't meet my eyes and kept tugging at Ethan, trying to leave. Looking at Ethan's combative posture, I just found him cute. What on earth made him think that age could wound a successful man? I came from an ordinary family, yet in less than a decade, I built my career to its current height. I have more than enough money to invest in myself. The 30-year-old me is in better shape than the 20-year-old me ever was. Seeing them together made me happy. Renee, you really just served yourself up on a silver platter. When news broke that Frank was a frequent visitor of private clubs with masseuses, he called me in a panic. For God's sake, I haven't been there in ages, precisely because I was afraid of getting caught. That club owner is no good. Selling me out. Curled my lip. I had anticipated Wellness Home would try to sling some mud. I had thoroughly investigated Frank's entire life. There was almost nothing that could be used as a scandal to escalate the conflict. Anything I found, I would have erased long ago. Elaine really was getting old. Her thinking was so antiquated. Did she really think that a career-driven man getting a foot rub from a masseuse counted as a scandal? Nothing to worry about, I reassured him. If you weren't single, some people with higher moral standards might criticize you. But you are single, Mr. Wilson. This isn't a scandal for you, it's a badge of honor for an eligible bachelor. Sure enough, before we even hired any paid commenters, the so-called scandal was shot down by a wave of online support. Damn, if I were a big boss, I'd have 10 different models from the club every night. I wouldn't even look at them if they weren't pale, beautiful, and long-legged. My virtue is entirely dependent on being poor. The man was so afraid of his kid getting a bad stepmom, he never even thought about remarrying. He's running a business and raising a child all by himself. What's wrong with him going to relax once in a while? Does CO Elaine really think her cheating during marriage is more noble than getting a massage? To the person above, cheating in a marriage is unforgivable, but going to relax is normal. I go all the time and a good masseuse feels amazing. I highly recommend everyone try it. I thought Elaine would be a tough opponent, but she just kept handing one PR win after another to her rival. It seems Frank was right. The only reason Elaine became a boss was thanks to the opportunities of the era and her own luck. What surprised me was when I was getting Vivian drunk again. She was leaning against the headboard, her face like a flower wilted by a storm, her voice weak. Elaine hired me as her PR consultant to help restore her reputation. I was about to toss her clothes at her and tell her to get lost, as usual, but hearing this, I raised an eyebrow at her. Oh, and? Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she looked at me pitifully. Give me a title and I won't help her. I crossed my arms. Are you threatening me? After looking her up and down, I tilted my chin with interest, looking down on her. You're a damn good PR person. Why don't we have a little battle and see who comes out on top? She struggled to sit up. If you like the thrill of being opponents in public and lovers in private, I suppose that's not out of the question. She was really getting ahead of herself. I just purely wanted to compete with her. I like a challenge. However, Vivian never gave me that chance. 6 months later, while on a business trip, I saw a 2-word message from Frank. They're married. I felt instantly refreshed. Renee and Ethan had gotten their marriage certificate. Frank was squeezing wellness home, but not with a single crushing blow. He was boiling the frog slowly, letting it gradually suffocate. At a time like this, if some old, ugly woman offered Elaine a chance to trade her son for resources, of course she'd jump at it. But why would Ethan ever agree? He'd be desperate to lock things down with Renee and make it official. Renee, a woman who spends all her days buried in a lab, wouldn't sense the undercurrents of the business world and would have no sense of crisis. The final assault on Wellness Home came right after Renee and Ethan got married. Clearpath Home completely monopolized the raw material suppliers in the city and its surrounding areas. Elaine had to travel farther to negotiate with new suppliers. Even if the raw material prices were similar, the transportation costs skyrocketed. She was forced to raise the prices of her products. Before this, I had always advised Frank to avoid the offline market and focus on online sales channels. Because Wellness Home relied on its established brand recognition and affordable prices to maintain its place in the cleaning products industry. Now, Clearpath Home was offering higher shelf rental fees, squeezing Wellness Home's offline display space, selling its products for less, and constantly running promotions to attract customers. The main shoppers in supermarkets are retirees and working professionals. The older generation wants to save every penny they can. If the professionals are married with kids, as long as the product isn't complete junk, they're more willing to buy the cheaper option. Wellness Home's market share was being chipped away, and several production lines were cut. At this point, the shell company Frank had prepared stepped forward. With a polished, fake corporate history, it offered to lease Wellness Home's production lines to make its own products, paying a rental fee. They paid a deposit up front, with the rest to be paid after the products were made. Once Wellness Home finished production, the shell company reneged on the deal, refusing to pay the balance and rejecting the products. For ClearPath, it was a losing deal, but now that it was a large, successful company, losing a few $100,000 wasn't a devastating blow. But for Elaine, it was enough to make her lose her shirt. Running a production line costs money every single day. The small deposit wasn't nearly enough to cover the cost of materials and operations. The piled-up finished products were also hard to sell. No matter how you crunched the numbers, it was a loss. To cut her losses, Elaine had no choice but to sell her factory. With ClearPath Home looming over her, no matter who she sold to, she had to sell cheap. I heard that after Elaine sold her factory, her blood pressure shot up, and she was left half paralyzed. Ethan was foolish but filial. Someone whispered in his ear that his mother's paralysis could be treated abroad, and with her years of experience running a company, a comeback wasn't impossible. How could the high and mighty prince ever resign himself to being an ordinary person? Deluded, he rushed his mother overseas for treatment. $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. His useless sister couldn't afford it, so the burden fell on Renee. The next time I saw Renee, it was at a celebration banquet for a new partnership between Triumph Pharmachem and her university department. I had facilitated the partnership. Any professor from the department except Renee could have been in charge. In other words, Renee wouldn't get a single dime from it. At the dinner table, Renee looked haggard and disheveled, as if all the life had been drained from her. She was slightly surprised to see me.
I smilte her.
Throughout the dinner, I was the life of the party, laughing and talking, but I didn't give her another glance. After the banquet ended, she was waiting for the bus at a stop outside the hotel. I walked up slowly behind her and heard her speaking impatiently on the phone. "What more do you want? We've sold everything in the house that can be sold. You owe so much money back home. The creditors are constantly harassing me. You've already ruined my life. What more do you want?" The money. Of course, Frank had sent people to lend it to him. The little prince was taking care of his mother all by himself. Such a brave and filial son. A good boy like that should be allowed to focus on his mother without any worries. Naturally, his wife, Renee, should be the one to pay back the money. Tonight, there was no wind and no moon, just a few scattered stars. The air was actually quite nice. A Mercedes pulled up in front of me. A young girl's head poked out from the driver's seat. She whistled playfully. "Hey, handsome, get in. I'll take you somewhere fun." It wasn't Vivian. She was too clingy. After sleeping with her twice, I got bored. Renee heard the voice and turned around. I smiled at her and got in the car. The scenery outside the car window began to recede. In the rearview mirror, Renee's back was hunched. A woman who should have been in her prime now looked old and decrepit. The smile on my face grew wider and wider. Her lover became her burden. How tragic. Renee. Serves you right.